1955, a year of anxiety and triumphs. A major medical hurdle was crossed with the discovery by Dr. Jonas Salk of the anti-polio vaccine, which was to spread a mantle of protection over millions of American children. And the scientist entered the ranks of the medical immortals. Leading drug firms shifted into high gear to meet a national demand, which spread to every crossroads despite early controversy. Each hastily set up center became a mecca for anxious parents shepherding little Johnny and little Jill to their inoculations. They're protected, and it didn't hurt a bit.
Any mention of modern medical miracles would have to put vaccines at the top of the list. After all, think of the end of the great plagues of smallpox that killed hundreds of thousands of people. Think of polio, measles, mumps, chickenpox, diphtheria. Indeed, it is the advances in immunization, and with that, our vaccines, that have helped numerous individuals prevent illnesses that otherwise would have shortened their lives. At least that's what we've been told. Are vaccines safe and effective? If you ask any major public health official, pediatrician, and scientist, they'll say, of course. What is causing the epidemic in autism? A controversy has swirled around the use of thimerosal in vaccines. Thimerosal is comprised of 49.6% mercury, a known neurotoxin. Are there any babies that died from what is called sudden infant death syndrome that actually died because of vaccines? More than 3,000 Americans are now in prison having been convicted of shaken baby syndrome. Is it possible that hot lots or bad, defective vaccine batches actually was the culprit and not the parent? Alan Yurko went to prison for life. Why? Because he was accused and found guilty of having shaken his baby. What if Alan Yurko was the victim, along with his baby, of a hot lot bad batch of vaccines? The medical authorities, the police investigators, the courts, no one chose to look at that possibility. We will. Sadly, many studies have shown vaccination to be a cause of sudden infant death syndrome. One study found the peak incidence occurred at 2 to 4 months in the United States, precisely when the first 2 routine immunizations are given, and half of sudden infant death cases are caused by vaccines. That's about 2,500 to 5,000 infants per year. One of these infants was Alan Yurko's 10-month-old son, Alan. The medical diagnosis was shaken baby syndrome, and in February of 1999, Alan Yurko was sentenced to life plus 10 years, with no chance of parole. In 2003, we took our cameras to Florida's Century Correctional Institution to interview him.
Lay out the evidence that supports my innocence. There's quite a bit. My child, who was premature, quite sickly when born.
His little chest was concaved, and as he would breathe, you could literally see his little chest caving in and exposing his rib cage and trying to get the oxygen that he needed.
He fed well, at first. He saw the pediatrician every week because he was a special care baby. So we actually didn't know this pediatrician. He was kind of thrown on us in the HMO style.
And every time that we had taken him in to the pediatrician would just disregard us as being overprotective worrywarts of parents and would explain it away by one thing or another. Oh, it's his food. Oh, with the congestion, it was the tubes that had to be put down his throat when he was born in his nose, and things of this nature. And so, and of course, you learn to trust your pediatrician.
We thought we were good parents. We had outlined contingency plans if, something happened, what we would do, and we thought we were doing all the right things. Then came time for vaccinations. The HIV, Hep B, DTP, and the polio vaccine.
All in one day. Regardless of all those things that were still going on with him, he received all 6 of those shots in one day.
I, in effect, arbitrarily trusted my son's life to a stranger. Man I never knew. Just kind of trusted him because he had a white coat on. Had I done something a little different there, then maybe things would be a little different. He might be, whether he might be alive or not is something that could be argued until the cows come home. This gets complicated.
The story of vaccines, the greater good versus the risk, no matter how small to the individual. It's a debate that began in this country nearly 300 years ago over smallpox. Edward Jenner, a country doctor, formulated the idea of vaccination fashioned after the old country tale that those who got cowpox were protected from smallpox. In order to test this theory, on May 14, 1796, he removed some fluid from Sarah Nelm's hand, which had cowpox lesions, and injected it into the arm of James Phipps, who was a healthy 8-year-old boy. Later, Jenner injected the boy with smallpox. When James did not come down with smallpox, Jenner concluded, quote, "The cowpox protects the human constitution from the infection of smallpox," unquote. That is the entire basis upon which the entire field of vaccination grew. A close look at history reveals that the entire case, based upon smallpox eradication, is itself unscientific. Some believe it is a total fraud. And all one has to do is be honest, objective, and simply look at the facts, not dogma.
A smallpox scare grips Great Britain in the wake of 5 deaths attributed to the disease that was all but wiped out in Western nations. Tens of thousands throughout the nation line up at health centers to be inoculated as officials attribute the outbreak to a smallpox-bearing Pakistani who arrived from his homeland a few weeks ago. There is an epidemic in that tiny country, and health authorities embarked on wholesale inoculations to prevent any such occurrence in Britain. Young and old, they all take it in their stride. U.S. medical men have joined in urging all travelers to be inoculated if they haven't been within the past year.
There were many doctors at the time that actually stated that in fact these illnesses were caused by the living conditions around during those days. However, it seemed to be much more prudent or a bit more palatable as far as the wealthy landowners were concerned, as far as the factory owners were concerned, as far as government was concerned, to try and find the panacea for these illnesses without having to deal with all these social conditions.
That cowpox inoculation had protected James Phipps from smallpox. Within a matter of a couple of years, that observation was translated into 6 languages. His cowpox vaccination became routine by the mid to late 1800s and early 1900s, and by 1977, smallpox, a disease which killed 500 million people in the world's history, was eliminated.
The death rate from smallpox went up markedly. Is the only illness that went up because of the use of the vaccine.
All these vaccines were introduced at the tail end of the decline. All the declines occurred well before vaccines.
It has always been about better food and better living conditions, and never has it been about medical intervention.
By injecting poisons, pathogens or whatever from the vaccine into the blood, you have bypassed most of your immune system.
When we bypass that natural protection, we attack the baby's cells, we attack the baby's health via the back door.
The whole principle of vaccines is very naive, it's very old, and we're using it as a commercial application of an idea that's at least 150 years old.
The argument that the pharmaceutical companies make is very deceptive. The assumption is vaccination is a good thing. In order for it to work, we have to spread it as widely as we possibly can, because otherwise the people who are not vaccinated will start a disease moving through the entire population. Therefore, we must work really, really, really hard to get these things into everybody. In the meantime, every single dose of vaccination that is sold brings them a tidy profit.
I think parents are wondering why every time industry produces a vaccine, it is automatically added to the mandatory list for school entry.
In the United States, the number of mandatory vaccine injections has risen to 36 per child. Each of these injections contains neurotoxins such as aluminum, formaldehyde, aborted fetal tissue, animal byproducts, heavy metals, and many others. What happens to a child's fragile immune system when it's overloaded with these toxins?
It is my opinion that a majority of cases now being attributed to shaken baby syndrome are in fact delayed vaccine reactions.
We were not given any pamphlets that are by law supposed to be given out to parents when a child is to receive vaccinations. However, we were told that your child may develop a high-pitched cry. You know, he may drop off in his eating and sleeping patterns. He may become warm to the touch, but these are all normal. And don't worry about it because they'll go away.
His temperature went up. His feeding pattern was markedly different. But this was normal, so we just gazed upon it with guarded concern.
Never vaccinate a sick child because their immune system is crippled. And that's always a dangerous situation.
I totally schlepped the whole vaccination thing. I worshipped the vaccines just like people do blindly. I thought they were the sacred cow. Never would question them.
By that weekend, it was about the 10th day or so after his shots. This is when he developed that high-pitched cry. And at first when Ellen and I heard it, we kind of giggled. Like, what is that? Because we had never heard this cry before. Ellen and I discussed, well, if he's not any better come Monday, that we'll take him into the doctor again. Well, that Monday morning came, and I got up, and little did I know that I would literally kiss my family goodbye for the last time.
He was a little fussy that morning. He didn't take his whole bottle. He had a couple spit-ups. I noticed that he was very still. I didn't know he'd stopped breathing at first. I ran red lights, fishtailed into the emergency room. I handed the baby over to the counter in the emergency room and I said, please make him breathe again. Doctors, they got him resuscitated. Talking to the doctors, they were saying, well, we think it's sepsis. We're going to take him to the bigger hospital, Florida hospital. We're going to do a life flight or a transport over there. And it was a long day there at that hospital in a waiting room.
And there we sat, and sat, and sat. No one would talk to us. No one would tell us what was going on.
Going back and forth with Fran, what could it have been, what happened, I don't know. Around 10 o'clock that night, that doctor came out, Dr. Ben Geeds, and had a little conference with us, and he sat us down in chairs, and quite coldly, as a matter of factly, said, your baby has broken ribs and bleeding on the brain, and he's gonna die. I
lost it at that point. I immediately lost it, and I wound up having to be sedated.
I think you got the wrong baby. Can you check? I mean, I seriously thought he had the wrong baby. Broken ribs, bleeding in the brain. There's no broken ribs. This is a mix-up, some type of oopsie-daisy. And he's saying, no, this is your baby. And we have the x-rays here and this, that, other. We need to know what happened.
Because you couldn't reach the 26,000 children a year who you believe are getting hepatitis B, you decided to vaccinate all the children in the United States.
That's correct. And in fact, that is a well-accepted public health approach and policy.
The idea that you would, in fact, vaccinate every single person born with a whole range of toxic chemicals, essentially, and think that that was, in fact, helping them is not a sound thought. $1.5 billion has been paid to parents whose children have either died or been maimed by vaccinations.
This is just a commercial operation. It's nothing to do with health, I don't believe, anymore.
The United States uses more vaccines than any country in the world. We have the most highly vaccinated population, particularly child population in the world. It's projected to be a $20 billion business by the year 2020.
When Dr. Sherrar appeared on ABC's 2020 in January, he said that he honestly believed the hepatitis B vaccine had not caused any problems. Can an employee of a pharmaceutical company that manufactures a vaccine be objective in designing experiments to show fault in a product that generates close to $1 billion in sales for his company?
There is an alliance between the pharmaceutical industry that produces vaccines, the federal agencies that regulate and recommend vaccines for mass use, and the doctors who give vaccines.
We are given journals to read with articles, reporting of results of studies that are primarily bought and paid for by the pharmaceutical industry. We have drug reps come to our office and bring us cushy little meals and give us a spiel about a drug which they learned in a weekend seminar, and doctors are getting this as their major source of information.
I spoke to the head of CDC, the person who actually put these programs in place. And he told me specifically that he was terminated in his job because he refused to make the annual public announcement that influenza vaccine should be administered now. Everyone should go get their flu shots.
What Americans need to realize is that vaccines are not risk-free. They carry a risk of injury or death, and that risk can be greater or lesser depending upon your individual makeup.
In more than 26 states, there is a movement to mandate that girls as young as 11 have the Gardasil vaccine. Gardasil is the Merck-produced vaccine designed to protect against 4 of the over 100 strains of the human papillomavirus. However, according to the lead researcher, Dr. Diane Harper of Dartmouth Medical School, quote, "Giving it to 11-year-olds is a great big public health experiment. It is silly to mandate vaccination of 11 and 12-year-old girls. There's not enough evidence gathered on the side effects to know that safety is not an issue," end quote. In addition, she has stated that Gardasil was never fully tested on young girls. All of the trials were with girls 15 to 25 years old, and in her personal opinion, the vaccine should only be used with girls 18 and up.
I think that Merck deserves the Oscar for marketing. They're selling the thing as a cancer scare without telling you, number one, you still might get cancer from the other 30%. Number two, you can't be positive for the HPV that it protects against at the time you get it. Number three, that even if you do get it at the proper time, you don't know whether it's going to work for 20 years. And then you are only going to know that it hasn't worked if you fail to get your pap smears.
I started receiving calls from constituents. It became apparent that the public really wasn't educated about this particular disease or even about the vaccine itself.
We're supposed to be a free country, but in this area we certainly are not a free country. And it certainly, when it has to do with the health of our children, this is one of the most basic rights we should have, but don't have.
Employees in the federal government who work for the FDA regulating vaccines, or work at the CDC making policy for vaccines, recommending mass use of vaccines, can leave government service and then go to work for the vaccine manufacturers, literally the day after they retire. This is something that we should not accept.
Sometimes people wonder whether or not they represent us. And I think what I can say, having been on that committee for 5 years, is that not only do they represent us, they are us. I think that when they sit around that table and they try and make the decision, is this vaccine safe and is this vaccine effective and will this vaccine be useful in this country, and they make a decision about whether or not it should be given to children, I think when they make that decision, what their one guiding principle is, would I give this to my own child or my own grandchild or my own niece and nephew? And only then, I think, and only then, are they willing to make a recommendation for children in this country.
They are invited into these meetings to all sit there and talk about how they can keep selling the idea to the American public that vaccines are safe. That's why they hold so many vaccine meetings, because they don't want the immunization program to fall, because it's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Dr. Offit was a good example. He sat on an advisory board for a vaccine that he held a patent. He received $350,000 for doing research on that vaccine, and he was paid to go around the country and talk to doctors and tell them it was safe to use this vaccine.
At the same time the government tells us it's safe and necessary, there's a government program called the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program, which compensates the families of children who are injured and killed by vaccination to the tune of $200 million a year. It is illegal in this country to sue the pharmaceutical companies and the physicians for injuries caused by vaccination. And if your child is killed or injured, you have to go to the government for a government handout and compensation.
Lindsay is representative of all the children who fall under the mandate. Lindsay received the hepatitis B vaccine 2 days before entering high school. The next day, she seemed flu-like. The day after that, so dizzy, she couldn't stand up without holding the walls. The following day, she passed out. Her ability to stand was compromised for almost 6 months due to unremitting dizziness. Following our doctor's advice, Lindsay had the series of 3. It was on the 3rd shot Lindsay became so violently ill within 2 hours that I knew the vaccine was the catalyst of her illness. Lindsay is plagued on a daily basis with headaches of a severe kind, joint pain, seizures, nausea, hair loss, dizziness, gastroesophageal reflux, and extreme fatigue. My daughter shouldn't have to suffer like this because government officials and drug company executives didn't do their jobs.
We really have given these companies such wide latitude to develop these vaccines and not really give us full information about what the ingredients in those vaccines can do in the human body.
One courageous New York State physician, a lady who wanted to tell the truth about vaccination, was told that she was delusional by the very same federal agency, the CDC, that we now know accepted vaccine recommendations from a professional committee that had over half of its members from pharmaceutical companies that made those vaccinations, and allowed for years deadly mercury toxins to be included in the 29 vaccinations that they claimed our children need.
Very difficult when you've been promoting a certain way of thinking for so many years and such a big industry has grown from that idea, and people are very dependent on that idea, that to suddenly announce that maybe it's not the right thing to do.
The main difficulty with the flu, for the overwhelming number of people who get it, is that it forces you to take several days off from work. Now, when they do the risk-benefit relationship, they don't do the health benefit versus the health risk. They do the economic benefit and risk. So they say 4 days off for X number of people costs the economy X billions of dollars, and therefore it's really important to do these flu vaccines to keep people at work. A public health official in Illinois, Chicago, fought this whole concept with the slogan, influenza is Mother Nature's way of telling you to slow down. He would not allow the flu vaccine in his area. Nobody died from his not having the vaccine in his neighborhood. And in fact, virtually no one dies of influenza. When they talk about the excess deaths, those excess deaths are primarily, if not exclusively, from pneumonia.
We had outbreaks of measles, and there were 55,000 cases, 11,000 hospitalizations, and as many as 120 deaths that occurred in the United States between 1989 and 1991. When we gave that second dose of measles vaccine, that virtually eliminated the disease. So now, instead of having, as we did before the measles vaccine, roughly 100,000 hospitalizations and 4,000 deaths every year from measles, last year we had 37 cases of measles and no hospitalizations and no deaths. I mean, a dramatic example of, I think, the power of vaccines.
Until they're personally affected by it, they will continue to believe they're safe and they're going to help.
Having found a polio virus, they then decided that that virus was the cause of polio. This has never ever been proved. However, take the virus, create a vaccine, and you have yourself a multi-billion-dollar industry.
In 1955, the announcement was made that Jonas Salk's polio vaccine worked. The fact that 200 people were paralyzed after getting the shot and 10 died was overlooked.
Baby's health is still fragile. We know that. We need to be careful, and yet we attack it from day one and make it
ill.
I do think that we can find that there have been some values to vaccinations in specific populations in specific time frames, but those are limited.
There are some instances in which vaccination can be useful. Some instances in where the payoff is more important than the risk. But that small opportunity to be useful has been blown up into a major public health activity that now endangers, in my opinion, every child that's born.
Because of other people's greed, our lives have been altered forever. My child will never be okay. Never be okay.
Vaccines cause the same symptoms as sudden infant death syndrome and SBS, internal brain hemorrhage, bone fracture, and external bruising. Doctors, the police, and even child protective teams were quick to arrest and prosecute Alan Yurko.
Not too long after that, Children and Families was called in, and investigators were called in. Before we knew it, they were throwing out accusations of child abuse and the nature of shaken baby syndrome.
The doctor was meanwhile trying to ask me, what happened? And I've told him what happened 100 times. You know, the over and over, this is what happened. He stopped breathing. I got him to the hospital. Why didn't you call? The phone's not on. Why wouldn't, they thought that was suspicious that I didn't call 911 and wait for an ambulance. I don't know why. I got him there in under 4 minutes. I got him there quick.
It was determined that there was bleeding within the sheath around the brain, inside the skull, and there was bleeding behind the eyes, retinal bleeding. So with this combination of symptoms, the diagnosis of shaken baby syndrome was triggered.
Around 2 in the morning, the nurses said, the detectives are here, they want to talk to you. Did you shake him? No. Did you hurt him? No. Did you hit him? No. Did he drop? No. Did he fall? No. Is it possible that when you were running with him, that maybe these injuries could have happened? I guess it's possible, but I don't think it's very probable. Eventually, life support was taken off. They rushed Francine in for life support, but not before I was arrested.
It is a scientific reality that vaccines have caused death or permanent disability. Families have been torn apart. Medical and governmental authorities have not recognized these occurrences.
We've seen an increase in the number of vaccines that our children are getting. We have gone from 23 doses of 7 vaccines in the 1980s to 48 doses of 14 vaccines by the time a child reaches the age of 6. By the time that a girl gets to be 12 years old in this country, the CDC says she's got to have 56 doses of 16 vaccines, with the recommendation of the HPV vaccine last year. So I think that we really need to do more research into what happens when we give all these vaccines to our children.
When a parent asks me about a vaccine, any of the vaccines, I have to be honest with them and say, I do not know what is going to happen to your child when and if they get this vaccine.
It encourages the bacteria in the body to produce toxins that are absorbed into the bloodstream. The vaccines add further toxins. This disturbs coagulation bleeding factors, so hemorrhages start. The toxins over a period of time chew up all the vitamin C, so you get scurvy-like changes in the bones which look like fractures.
The number of immunogenic or immunologic components contained in those vaccines don't add up to any more than about 135 or 140. That is a drop in the bucket of what a child typically encounters and manages every day.
The vaccine safety issue will not go away until parents get the answers to why our highly vaccinated children are so sick. A patient has the right, a person has the right, to be fully informed about the risks of any medical intervention and the right to exercise voluntary informed consent.
We are desperately trying to find not the cause, but the causes of autism. We believe there are a variety of different causes for this behavioral syndrome.
When the CDC was asked to comment upon the toxicity of thimerosal, their argument was that, well, there's not enough thimerosal or mercury preservative in a vaccine to cause all the damage that we're seeing in autism. But that was with one vaccine. No child receives one vaccine. In fact, depending upon the child, they could receive 20 to 30 different vaccinations, and 90% of them contain thimerosal.
My son at birth was completely normal. He had APGARs of 9 and 10, met all of his developmental landmarks the first year of life. He was walking and talking.
I have pictures of him when he was a little infant that just, you could see the twinkle in this kid's eye.
He lost his ability to communicate with us. He stopped eating. He would gag himself and vomit when he would try to eat. He didn't interact with us anymore.
You started seeing him turn away. The facial expression started to flatten out, and he wasn't quite the same.
Initially, we thought maybe he was deaf. When we shared our concerns with the pediatrician, she ordered tests, referred us to a specialist for a hearing examination. Ultimately, our son was diagnosed with pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified, which is a form of autism. My husband and I are both medical professionals. I'm a nurse practitioner, my husband is a physician, and it just didn't seem right to us that our son was autistic.
It was at that time that Lynn heard on, I believe it was on the television, that the FDA had come out, had released a statement saying that if your child had received thimerosal-containing vaccines, they may have exceeded their daily exposure of mercury. But don't worry about it. And I think that's what tweaked Lynn. When she heard don't worry about it, she says, well, if they're telling me not to worry about it, I'm going to worry about it.
My son was first vaccinated. Unbeknownst to me, he was being injected with 12.5 micrograms of mercury. That's huge. That amount of mercury, by EPA standards and guidelines for ingested mercury, you would have to weigh 225 pounds to be able to process that much mercury.
When a parent has a child that's born normally and is walking and talking and meeting milestones and then stops, that parent is going to seek out help. That parent is going to report it. That parent is going to do anything they can to try to get their child back.
I have seen children who, as far as we can tell, looking at videos, were completely, utterly normal in every way until they had the MMR vaccine.
My grandson was a normal child, and 2 days after, he got 9 shots in one day, several of which contained thimerosal, mercury, 40 sometimes the amount that was tolerable in an adult.
Merck Pharmaceuticals, the sole manufacturer of the MMR vaccine in the U.S., stands by its safety, saying, quote, "The vast weight of medical and scientific evidence strongly refutes an association between MMR and autism."
Liam was a normally developing baby until June 27, 1997, when he received his MMR and Hib vaccines. He did everything he was supposed to do. He cooed, rolled over, crept, crawled, pulled up, and walked right on time. He said, "Mama," he said, "Daddy," he said, "Love you."
He was born full term, normal in every way, vaginal birth with no interventions or drugs. His APGAR scores were 9 and 10, which means all his reflexes were perfect and present. Before discharge, he was immunized with Recombavax HB against hepatitis B. His 4th night in this world was his first at home, and about 5 hours after arriving home, he had his first seizure. The doctors told us we were causing Ben's seizures, odd behaviors, and delays by bad parenting.
We love you. Do you know how much we love you?
Oh. From the day that little Jack Counter was born in 1996, his proud parents began documenting his progress with a video camera.
Show them your tooth.
There was the first tooth, the first bowl of spaghetti, bye, and the first steps.
Powder, that's right. Where's the comb? Yeah. Toothpaste? Toothpaste. Hi, Mommy.
Jack's parents say by the age of 4, he had lost all of his verbal skills. Communication became a series of screams and tantrums. And there was other odd compulsive behavior, like constant repetitive movements and licking many objects. It was a urine test for 15 toxic metals that provided Joe and Teresa Counter with the first indication of what was wrong with their son. The test showed that Jack's levels for arsenic, cadmium, and nickel were normal or within an acceptable range. But look at the results for mercury. The line goes off the chart.
I was just awestruck that the symptoms of mercury toxicity were identical to the symptoms that my son had experienced.
We received no warning. Our pediatrician
seemed to think this was like giving an Advil or Tylenol or something. No warning, no, don't watch out, this is dangerous, this could cause convulsions. There's nothing whatsoever.
Medical negligence when treating victims of vaccine-induced injury and death is not uncommon. Was that the case with Alan Yurko? Alan Yurko has argued that there was an absence of properly executed medical examinations, police investigations, and an accurate autopsy.
All the while this is going on, they're pressuring Francine to donate the organs. They even forged her name on some of the papers.
I'd gotten a phone call from the nurse, not even Dr. Ben Getz himself, who on the phone said to me, "The doctor would like you to hurry up and get down here because he would like this over with before noon." Meaning, they wanted me to sign off the papers so they can go ahead and whisk him off to harvest his organs. Terminate his life. While I was there holding him with all these wires and stuff, those investigators were outside the door. I just lost my son. I just left him. They had this elaborate plan that they wanted me to get on the phone with Alan. They were going to make special arrangements that I could call into the prison facility. And they wanted me to tell him that I thought that he could do something like this, and let's see what he would say. And when I refused to cooperate, that's when they became angry. And they had gotten up and they had threatened me that I myself could be arrested.
At 2:45 p.m., just a couple hours after he was admitted to Florida, a right arterial heparin line. This was not a flush. This was a line for heparin. Heparin is an anticoagulant. It promotes bleeding. It prolongs bleeding. It triggers and causes complications of bleeding. It is absolutely contraindicated by every known medical orthodox text on earth in patients with suspected closed hand injury or CNS bleeding or any otherwise such complications. Why? Because it causes brain bleeds.
If you give it to an individual with anemia and hypotension and it's about 9 times the therapeutic dose, of course you will have bleeding. The bleeding you have 3 types. One is organized, it means it's attached and there was fibrosis, and the other clotted and the other fresh, 3 stages. Now the theory of shaken baby syndrome, they said, is you shake the baby a few seconds and you get a bleeding. Now, if Alan or anybody shake the baby and there was a bleeding and the bleeding stopped right there, it means what do you expect? You expect to see one type of bleeding, not three stages of bleeding. So how a forensic pathologist will miss that, I do not understand. The baby Alan, when they did a blood analysis, and he had more than 500,000 platelets per microliter of blood at the admission. It means this is normal or above normal. Why it's above normal a little bit? Because the baby has anemia, and this is we call hyperplasia. The baby lost about 40% of the platelets, and that's to show you the bleeding is happening after the admission. And who's doing that? Is the heparin. When you give heparin, the platelets stick together.
On top of that, sodium bicarbonate, NaCO3, was administered, which should be stopped when pH levels reach 7.2 in a diabetic condition or state, and in which Alan met that criteria. He was still given bicarbonate at 7.5, 7.6, and at 7.7. This may sound not a big deal, but it would kill you or me or anyone else if you did it very fast and very effectively. Your brain would swell and you would die. They held him on life support and gave him even more heparin. So by the time that organ transplantation and harvesting procedures were done, About 5 hours after that, an autopsy was done. Here's where it gets very morbid. The autopsy report lists him as a black child. My wife and I are Caucasian. He was Caucasian. The autopsy has 25 other errors and discrepancies. For all intents and purposes, the body described in this autopsy was not my child. He described the head centimeter circumference as being 22 centimeters. Alan was born with a 31.5 centimeter head.
If I would have known all the things that were wrong on the autopsy and everything, then I wouldn't have thought he was, you know, pretty well prepared. I wouldn't think he was doing the job right.
The head injury is again, one of the most defining aspects of the shaken baby syndrome. And that being ultimately his opinion that caused the death of the child, failed to take into account a huge body of research now that we know there could have been other just as believable or even more believable causes of the child's death.
The medical examiner, when he see fresh bruises, the medical examiner will stand in court and say, these bruises, this bleeding is less than 1 day old. And he did the autopsy on November 29. And the baby was admitted on the 24th. What did that tell you? It may tell you that bruises happen after giving that huge amount of heparin. And he took pictures of these bruises, and he showed in court as an evidence that because they want to influence the thinking of the jury. This is a corruption.
He described a microscopic examination of heart tissue. In order to do this, tissue excision has to be cut from the heart. His heart was successfully harvested and transplanted. It would seem ludicrous to cut tissue from a donor heart, especially a baby's heart, as precious as those are. The heart was donated. How is there an examination of the heart? Nobody saw it. Lawyers, investigators, myself. No one noticed it until after the trial. Recently, Dr. Gore has blamed the mistake, and admitted to many others, on a dictation transcription error.
I don't think there is a credible, really believable explanation. The explanation he might make would be that he does hundreds of autopsies every year. He's overworked and overwhelmed, and as is his staff, and mistakes get made, but it doesn't really explain it.
The evidence clear shows that Alan York is innocent. Why the physicians and the medical examiner, they did not do their job.
What damaged baby Alan? Can constituents of vaccines cause medical emergencies that could be mistaken for shaken baby syndrome? Can they inflict neurological damage that can manifest itself as autism? The mercury in thimerosal used in the vaccines is a known neurotoxin. One of the most common side effects of mercury toxicity is neurological damage that can cause disruption in how a child's brain will process information. And while the government says that thimerosal is out of the vaccines, many are crying government hypocrisy. It is recommended and in one state mandated that children get the flu shot, and the flu shot still contains mercury. And what about other potentially dangerous substances in vaccines? What damage can they cause?
Well, for one thing, he was sick for a long time. For a number of years, he was very sick. Around a little bit after 2, he started tantruming, and he'd be hitting his head.
He was constantly taking off his shoes. He screamed if we dressed or undressed him. He would stare for hours in front of a television and wouldn't move if you blocked the view. He couldn't tolerate playing in the sandbox anymore. He didn't want to sing any of his favorite songs. He would cover his ears and just scream no.
My son doesn't have the coordination to be able to take a spoon. He eats off a plate a baby eats off of that has the little sections. He needs something to scoop. I mean, it's so sad that my 11-year-old has to come to me and say, Mommy, can you help me eat? And I think my son spends more time at the doctor's office, you know, than he does on a playground. It's a tough life, and it's a hard life, and I wouldn't wish this on anybody, except for the people that knowingly caused this.
What had happened to our beautiful baby boy, and how could we help him? My husband and I decided to become advocates and work for increased funding for autism research and for awareness. The answers may not come in time to help our son, but we're hopeful that we can persuade you to see the need for intensive research regarding this disorder, which is affecting more and more children every year.
I think that we have many children who are chronically inflamed from receiving too many vaccines again and again. Atypical manipulation of the immune system in the developmental years, particularly through age 3, when the immune system is continuing to develop.
It is only when their systems are overburdened, overtaxed, where this system can become imbalanced. By giving large doses of vaccines and multiple doses of vaccines to children, we are unaware of the effect that that has on their immune system.
If a person has an immune system that is prone toward an autoimmune response, and you keep beating it up time and time again, starting at birth and then at 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 12 months, a lot of those children will develop autoimmune diseases. And sometimes it will look like autism, and sometimes it will be juvenile rheumatoid arthritis or juvenile diabetes or all kinds of other things.
On vaccination days, right up until just a couple of years ago, we gave kids mercury at birth in the hepatitis B shot. At 2 months of age, they typically got 3 shots containing mercury, a total of 65 micrograms of mercury in one day for a child that weighs about 10 pounds.
When we get exposed to viruses, usually it's not going to be measles, mumps, and rubella together. So I think that can affect the immune response in an aberrant or abnormal way and cause problems. So my thing would be, if you're going to give an MMR, you give the measles, and then a couple of months later or several months later, you give the mumps and rubella. You separate them out, allow the immune response to see that one attenuated virus and respond in an appropriate way.
My son had received 235 micrograms of ethyl mercury during his first 2 years of life.
Lynn comes to me and tells me about it, and I'm a physician, not only a physician in family medicine, trained to believe in vaccines and all the good that these diseases can be prevented with vaccination. I know about heavy metals, I know about lead, I know about mercury. And I'm hearing this and it all fits and it all makes sense.
1 out of every 6 women already has high enough levels of mercury to cause damage to their unborn children. So in addition to that, we were injecting infants with a known neurotoxin and excessive federal gay safety guidelines.
Even in children who received vaccines that did not have the mercury in them, frequently parents report the toxicity associated with these vaccines. So it's not just the mercury, but also the vaccine in itself that is toxic.
There are other additives in vaccines that could also be playing a role. Just because the mercury was taken out of most childhood vaccines by 2002 doesn't mean that these vaccines are safe. And indeed, we have continued to see increases in autism and ADHD and learning disabilities and asthma and all these other things.
There is nothing new with our new vaccines because the principle is exactly the same. You destroy a baby's health just because you introduce unnatural materials together with decaying, rotting, infectious material deep into the baby's body.
There is absolutely no doubt that they never did the basic animal testing on the use of thimerosal. Only a year ago did an independent researcher at Columbia University do the first study of thimerosal injected into infant animals, into infant mice. And she found that the infant mice, 2 of the strains were completely unaffected, but a 3rd strain was severely affected and severely damaged, major problems to its brain development, to its neurological function, to its coordination. One of the mice was the way it interacted with its litter mates. Instead of just normal grooming, it ground through the skull of its litter mate into its brain. That is extremely abnormal behavior just from the amount of thimerosal equivalent to what a human child would have received.
The new vaccine
was compared to the other vaccine, and that was considered the placebo. One of the cornerstones of medicine is double-blind, placebo-controlled studies. That's the science upon which our entire industry builds its consensus. Well, the placebo here is another vaccine. Only healthy infants are enrolled. So after the vaccine is approved, it's given to all of them. And that serious events were negated by the stroke of a pen. And what was actually said in both of those studies is that none was judged by the investigators to be related to vaccination, which always brings up a really important question. Why is it whenever there's a side effect or a complication, it's never the fault of the vaccine?
I think the government or certain public health officials in the government have been too quick to dismiss the concerns of these families without studying the population that got sick. I haven't seen major studies that focus on 300 kids who got autistic symptoms within a period of a few weeks of a vaccine. I think that the public health officials have been too quick to dismiss the hypothesis as irrational without sufficient studies of causation. They don't want to pursue a hypothesis because that hypothesis could be damaging to the public health community at large by scaring people. First of all, I think the public's smarter than that. The public values vaccines, but more importantly, I don't think you should ever turn your back on any scientific hypothesis because you're afraid of what it might show.
When they autopsied brains at Harvard University and Johns Hopkins University, autistic people, they found activation of certain brain cells called glial cells. Now, these are the same cells that researchers out in Washington, at the University of Washington, found in primates exposed to mercury that was allowed to accumulate in their brains. It activated these glial cells and sparked this hyperneuroinflammation, rapid brain growth. It's the exact same thing we see in children with autism as we see in primates exposed to thimerosal and mercury in the brain. That, to me, is not a smoking gun, but it certainly is an avenue of research that I think should be pursued as quickly as possible.
I believe that autism is a medical disorder and that we have an epidemic of autism, and I do not believe the primary cause is genetic because there's no such thing as a genetic epidemic. I do believe that there are environmental causes that are preceded by a genetic predisposition.
25 years ago, when I was teaching children with autism, the numbers were 1 in 10,000. Now it's 1 in 94 to 1 in 150. That is not purely a genetic problem. We do not have genetic epidemics. There's something that has changed in those last 2 decades that has caused the tremendous rise. It's not just us as physicians being better diagnosticians. Autism is a clinical disease. We're not necessarily better at making those types of diagnoses than we were 20 years ago. So something else has changed, and we need to look at what's changed, not just in autism, but in asthma, in diabetes, in autoimmune diseases, arthritis. All of those have risen, and what could it be?
After nearly losing him, we were sent home the next day with a shrug. No one mentioned the vaccine. Obviously, no one knew what was wrong. I asked for a delay for Ben's other immunizations at 2 months and was refused. I knew that accepted pediatric practice dictates that a sick child should not be immunized, but the doctor refused. When I persisted, he told me we could either immunize Ben on schedule, which we had to do because it was the law, or we could call DSS. With this threat, Ben was immunized, and all his symptoms worsened. He cries hard with one breath, which seems to empty his lungs, and he is then silent, mouth open, not breathing. And struggling for air.
The thimerosal at the level contained in vaccines never did harm. And I think that basically thimerosal at preservative levels has been removed from vaccines since the spring of 2001.
I think one reason government officials are so adamant in denying any link between any vaccine component and autism, ADD, and other neurodevelopmental disorders is because they truly believe in the critical importance of mass vaccination, that the National Immunization Program must be protected at all costs. These are not evil people. They really truly believe in the welfare of children. They truly believe in keeping infectious diseases down to a minimum. And in order to achieve that, you have to have at least an 80 or 90% vaccination. But there are other motivating factors at work. Human nature. If you've been accused of making a ghastly mistake that may have potentially poisoned a generation of American children and caused tens of billions, if not trillions of dollars in societal costs, not to mention the heartbreak to these families and basically ruining these kids' lives, anybody accused of making that mistake, however inadvertently and in the name of good science and public health, you're going to fight those accusations. You are going to do whatever you can to unearth evidence to exonerate yourself, your profession, your decisions, your reputation, the government, etc. It's human nature. I think anybody would do that.
I don't like to quote scripture very often, but there's none so blind as those that will not see. You just sit there and you keep saying over and over and over again that you think that there's not a real danger for having this mercury in these vaccines. There's been 1,500 plus articles written saying that there is a problem. We've got scientists from all over the world coming in here. You saw a demonstration from a Canadian tape showing the impact of a minute amount of mercury in brain cells, and you guys just continue to keep coming up here and making excuses, and I don't understand why. Why not just get it out of there?
Under pressure from the American Academy of Pediatrics and the CDC, pharmaceutical companies agreed to stop manufacturing vaccines containing thimerosal in March 2001. But while production may have ceased, vaccine vials already containing thimerosal were not recalled.
There's never been a recall. There's never been a federal ban on thimerosal in vaccines.
The topic was researched, was reviewed. No data to prove a causative role. Nevertheless, a call for thimerosal removal was made. Within 2 months of publication of that statement, the hepatitis B vaccine for infants was free of thimerosal. Within 18 months, there was on the market all thimerosal-free vaccine.
But there's still trace amounts, and a trace amount, as far as I'm concerned, is still too much. You don't know somebody's total body mercury burden, so even a trace amount could push someone over the edge into a neurological disorder.
First, they say it's not a problem. Then they say we really haven't been using it all that much. Then they say we stopped, and all of that's not true.
Are there still vaccines in doctors' offices right now today that contain thimerosal that are being given to children?
I don't believe so, no. As I mentioned, all vaccines for the routine recommended childhood immunization series started 2001, have been manufactured either thimerosal-free or with markedly reduced amounts of thimerosal. Now, that's just the vaccines that are in the routinely recommended childhood immunization schedule.
Can you say right now, just flat out, just say, can you tell me without any doubt whatsoever that the mercury in vaccines does not cause neurological problems or autism?
We can neither accept nor reject a causal relationship.
So what you're saying is you cannot tell me that. You cannot say categorically, can you?
We don't know one way or the other. But
so why are you keeping something in there if you don't know one way or the other? When you know that there's an epidemic of autism. If there's an epidemic of something, why do you keep it in there when you're not sure? Because every study I've seen flatly says you're not sure. You say you can't say yay or nay.
I think you have to consider the benefit that vaccines confer.
So we have vaccinations, which, by the way, all of them meet the hot lot criteria given by the FDA. One especially was extremely volatile, DTAP7H81507 by Connaught Labs. Has right now to date over 70 adverse reaction reports, 5 deaths, 28 hospital stays, 12 unknown recoveries. So this was ranked as the hottest lot between the years of 1990 and 1999 for deaths associated with any DTAP vaccine from Connaught Labs. Had we known that at trial, things might be different. 5 other babies had died within an average 11-day period, which is exactly our son's. Not just a coincidence. Went to trial. We had one expert, very respected pathologist. In fact, nationally known and praised in opinions by the courts. They had 5 local doctors, all contracted. and we lost.
We had public defenders who had never done a case like this before. They were not educated in any of these medical issues. We were outnumbered by state's experts compared to our defense expert. They had 5 to our 1.
Our expert said this was not a traumatic death. The bleeding happened in the hospital. The tissue markers are clear. It's not even arguable. They argued it anyway. Jury believed them. Got sentenced to life in prison, no parole, plus 10 years.
More than 3,000 Americans are now in prison because of being convicted for shaken baby syndrome. The question is, how many of those individuals are wrongfully in prison? Most of the expert witnesses testifying on behalf of defendants do not have a background on the medical risks of vaccines.
Got to prison, still didn't know how my son died. And that's what haunted me. How did he die? What the hell happened?
Every trial is unique, and every trial has some feature about it that you remember. One of the jurors fell asleep. In the face of the seriousness of the charge and the graphic form of the evidence and the fact that it was an infant boy as a victim, it's hard to imagine a juror falling asleep.
These people were unable to take any notes during court. They heard nothing but 3 days of medical testimony, so I can't possibly understand what these jurors could even comprehend.
A jury that is unfamiliar with the complex nature of the brain, I mean, what could be a more intricate organ to be making decisions on, is given the responsibility of determining innocence or guilt when they really can't fully understand the issues.
In spite of the fact that the evidence was complicated, technical, comprising of expert opinions, that the jurors only deliberated 3.5 hours.
Just imagine the double negative. You find out your child is autistic, you're told that they're going to remain this way for the rest of their life, and then you're told, oh, by the way, there's no insurance that's going to cover you. Depending upon how severe the child is and which therapies are required, it can cost anywhere between $2 to $5 million over the course of a child's life for treatment.
The Vaccine Injury Compensation Fund has a 3-year statute of limitations. If they don't know within that 3-year period that their child may have been affected by these vaccines, they're out of luck. And those people, some are selling their homes, they're spending their life savings.
These parents have no way to take care of these kids. These drug companies just keep lying. The media will repeat their lies that there is no cause. And the FDA and the CDC did know. In 1999, there was a secret meeting, and they decided that they weren't going to let the people know. They were going to keep it a secret.
There were quotes from people at the meeting that's still a high relative risk, and if that were true, then they felt that it would be unsafe to be using thimerosal in vaccines.
Dr. Orenstein, on page 1 and 2, he gives his introduction. My name is Walter Orenstein. I'm director of the National Immunization Program at CDC. I want to thank all of you for coming here and taking time out of your very busy schedules to spend the next day and a half with us. Those who don't know, initial concerns were raised last summer that mercury, as methylmercury in vaccines, might exceed safe levels. There is a very limited pharmacogenetic data concerning ethylmercury. There is very limited data on its blood levels. There is no data on its excretion. It is recognized to both cross placenta and blood-brain barrier. The data on its toxicity, ethylmercury, is sparse. It is primarily recognized as a cause of hypersensitivity. Acutely, it can cause neurological and renal toxicity, including death from overdose. Then Dr. Johnson, on page 198 of the document, says, my gut feeling, it worries me enough. Forgive this personal comment, but I got called out at 8 o'clock for an emergency call. My daughter-in-law delivered a son by C-section, our first male in the line of the next generation, and I do not want that grandson to get a thimerosal-containing vaccine until we know better what is going on. It will probably take a long time. In the meantime, and I know there are probably implications for this internationally, but in the meantime, I think I want that grandson to only be given thimerosal-free vaccines. That horrifies me. These people sat in this meeting knowing how harmful this was, and they were able to sit there and protect their own families from the devastating effects of mercury in vaccines, but yet they told me and the rest of America that it was okay. That's criminal. That should not happen. These people should be held accountable for what they've done. They robbed me of my son and who he could have become. Dr. Bernier on page 113, and he worked for the CDC, says basically this data needs to be protected, and they're asking the people who've done a great job protecting this information to keep protecting this information. Dr. Von Stratton, who did the study for the CDC, quotes on page 162, "When I saw this and I went back through the literature, I was actually stunned by what I saw because I thought it was plausible. Now I don't know how much you can get from animals to humans, but that tells me mercury at 1 month of age is not the same as mercury at 3 months, at 12 months, prenatal mercury, later mercury. There is a whole range of plausible outcomes for mercury." Dr. Clover says on page 187, "No one around here is going to say that mercury per se is not a concern." I mean, I could sit here and go on and on and on with the quotes from this meeting. It absolutely, I mean, there's no words for what they've done other than absolutely criminal. This document alone should have brought down officials at the CDC and many of the pharmaceutical representatives that attended this meeting.
The manufacturers conduct clinical trials, and whenever anything bad happens in that clinical trial, 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, they write off the health problem that occurs or the death that occurs as a coincidence.
If autism was always with us, if autism was purely genetic, if autism affected 1 in 150 people, and by the way, that's about 1 in 90 males, we should not only see that among 8-year-olds, but we should see that among 20-year-olds and 40-year-olds and 60-year-olds. And we should see that same rate in Denmark and in France and in Japan, and we don't.
Teachers are desperate for help. A teacher who used to love teaching often now has tears in their eyes when you ask them how are things going, because children have so many impulse control problems, nervous system problems. Some have panic disorders, some have obsessive compulsive disorders, and a great deal of hyperactivity. Something's wrong, and we're not going about looking at the solutions in the right way.
Ms. Fisher, tell me why you began this crusade. Tell me about what happened with your son.
My son was a bright, healthy 2.5-year-old child until he got his 4th DPT shot and had a convulsion and a collapse shock reaction within hours of that shot and was left with multiple learning disabilities and attention deficit disorder. But again, this debate is not about what happened to my child. What it's about is, are we as Americans going to have the right to informed consent to any medical procedure which carries the risk of injury or death?
Autism is a disease of young people. Yes, there are adults with autism, but they don't exist in anywhere near the numbers that we're seeing.
What's interesting is that this is not something that's debated in toxicology. It's not something that's debated when toxicologists know the effect of these poisons on the human body. But what happens is outside of science, when it comes to the commercial application of science, when it comes to health policy, then suddenly these things are no longer applicable. Suddenly these things aren't actually happening.
To my knowledge, there was no attempt to hide the study. There would be no reason to hide any data. There's no reason.
Subsequently, the CDC did release a report to the public, but the findings were much different. The new study was amended with different data, which lowered the autism rate.
I can't imagine that smart people could possibly have rearranged the data the way they were done and represented the data the way they were done without doing it on purpose and with the express purpose of, as you say, a cover-up.
A lot of these kids are about to turn 18, and when they do, they will become wards of their state. When that happens, when the taxpayer starts noticing that we now have to pay millions, if not billions of dollars every year for the care of young adults with autism, they will then start asking, where are these people coming from? They weren't around 10 years ago.
If I could just go back in time and not vaccinate him, that would be the one thing I wouldn't do over. And the guilt as parents to know that you were sort of a participant in your child's disability because you were there, you signed the paper, you signed the consent form, you helped hold them down for these vaccines to be given, thinking you're protecting your child.
If I could strike the belief that my son's autism sprang from a routine childhood vaccination that I held him down on the table for and had to go back to the Russian roulette of genetics, I would take it in a heartbeat. Because the pain knowing that I inadvertently caused him harm due to the blind trust in the medical community or a matter of inconvenience of yet another office visit taking time away from my job is nearly unbearable.
This is what I made my oath toward. This is what my life's mission has been, as a physician, to see what happened to my child and others while mainstream medicine continues to look the other way has been unbearable.
Many in the medical community continue to dismiss this as mere happenstance because autism often coincides with the time of vaccination and state that there is no scientific evidence to back this up. My question to you is, how long does it take for a coincidence to surface time and time and time again, case after case after case, before it can become a viable hypothesis, especially when the solution to solving the problem seems so apparent? How can pharmaceutical companies concoct substances with mercury, formaldehyde, antifreeze, lead, aluminum, aborted fetal tissue, and live viruses, and not expect that as they continue to pour these highly toxic and reactive substances into children, increasing dose after dose all on the same day, that it won't alter their minds and bodies? And where is their scientific evidence to back up the claim that this cannot happen when it's published in the very package inserts in their writing that they have not studied the effects of these vaccines for more than a few weeks?
As a person trained in public health sciences, it is plain to me that a program to vaccinate newborns is of no worth to anyone except those who sell vaccines.
We have demonstrated time and time again the importance of having all children immunized in order to prevent these outbreaks of disease.
Look, this is not communist China, where the collective good is invoked in order to commit human rights abuses and devalue the life of the individual. This is America, where we have the right to have choices and to make decisions about the health of our children and our families.
Alan Yurko believes that he should not have suffered in vain. Therefore, he has been helping others who are incarcerated for shaken baby syndrome, paving the way towards revealing the truth behind sudden infant death syndrome and childhood vaccination programs. How many actual children die each year in the United States due to vaccines? No one knows.
I'm sitting out in the yard. I'd had feces thrown on me, urine, spit, sour milk. I'm low on the totem pole of prisoner respect. I really had just an epiphany of some sort in a prison yard.
He's been able to find medical information and to coordinate the work of others outside the prison so that now, in the last few years, a great body of new information has been developed. And it hasn't been developed by researchers in a library or in a teaching hospital somewhere. It's been developed in those places, but at the stimulation and leadership of Alan Yurko, sitting in the Florida State Prison up in Century, Florida, up in the Panhandle.
I said, I'm not going to let this happen to me. I'm a pretty smart guy. I can understand things. I'm going to be my own expert now. I started writing everybody and their brother. Anybody that had MD, PhD, anything after their name, they were getting a letter. Thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands. Oh, over 40,000 letters. Myself, not including others now. About 400 more letters later, we started to get some responses.
There was something about the letter that absolutely galvanized me. I mean, I just sensed or knew that something was very wrong. I did write back, asked to have the medical records sent. Francine did send the medical records, and first thing I looked for was the vaccine records. And I said, that's it.
I ended up interviewing Alan and including his story in our publication, and I made it clear to him that we were not an anti-vaccine organization. And he responded with something that struck me. He said, I'm not anti-vaccine either. I'm pro-vaccine safety. But we're not a barbaric society where we sacrifice some children and maim some infants for the benefit of others. And I then saw the perspective with which the Yurko Project looks at the vaccine safety issue.
The media is even now on our side. I can't believe that. The media was not very kind to me at first. Now they're asking the medical examiner to step down.
I think that Alan Yurko is doing the best he can to research all this, and like you say, if he was guilty, I don't think he'd even be taking time to do this. He'd just be forgetting about it.
One of the big things that has continued to keep us together is the hope and the faith that justice will prevail, and he will be home soon.
My daughter, Lila LaRose Belkin, died on September 16, 1998, at the age of 5 weeks, about 15 hours after receiving her second hepatitis B vaccine booster shot. Lila was a lively, alert 5-week-old baby when I last held her in my arms. Little did I imagine, as she gazed intently into my eyes with all the innocence and wonder of a newborn child, that she would die that night. She was never ill before receiving the hepatitis B shot that afternoon. At her final feeding, she was extremely agitated, noisy, and feisty, and then she fell asleep suddenly and stopped breathing. The autopsy ruled out choking. The New York medical examiner ruled her death sudden infant death syndrome. But in the notes and in the conversations with our pediatrician and with us on the day of the autopsy, what the coroner said: brain swollen, not sure cause yet, could not see how recombinant vaccine could cause problem. SIDS is a diagnosis of exclusion. It means it's not this, it's not that, it's not something, it's not, a swollen brain is not SIDS. And it turns out that in the medical literature, a swollen brain inflammation is one of the most common signs of an adverse reaction to a vaccine.
At first, I just wanted to get out of prison, go home, be with my family, clear my name, be part of my daughter's life, make this right. I didn't care about everybody else's family. I could have cared less. I was thinking about me. But after you get into the books and you start looking at what really is going on, there's just no way you can't start saying, oh my God, 6,000 babies died last year from a bad vaccine.
It's no longer just about Alan Yurko in the case of our family. It's about so many others out there.
Alan Yurko had the representation of experienced and capable lawyers. What he didn't have was the benefit of medical knowledge that is available now, but was not available then.
We're prepared to bring in our armada of experts, an armada of evidence, the media. We're going to pack the courtroom. There'll be free Alan Yurko t-shirts and banners. We're coming in with all the guns loaded. And I think that they're going to have to pay attention.
Alan Yurko is an incredible person. They picked on the wrong guy.
I believe that there are actual cases of shaken baby syndrome. What I don't believe is that parents are all of a sudden in epidemic and pandemic fashion shaking their babies. It just doesn't make sense. I believe poor medicine and poor diagnosis, assembly line diagnosis, lazy medicine, and iatrogeny is leading to a great number, vast number of innocent people being accused. And I believe vaccinations are prime in this.
As a lawyer who's practiced criminal law for over 35 years, I've come to the conclusion that Alan Yurko is an innocent man. And I'm standing in his corner, and I do anything I could to see that he gets another trial and that he's acquitted of these charges.
Would you have another child?
I don't know. I'd be scared. I'd want one. But I'd probably have to move to South America or some jungle somewhere. I don't think they'd leave me alone.
The big problem is that cases are never properly investigated.
We need to have a law that they do differential diagnosis in any case of injury and death in child.
If Alan Yuko is freed, it will demonstrate to doctors a whole new understanding of infant illnesses.
My message to parents is to educate before you vaccinate.
At least do your research. Get the pamphlets. Look on the internet. Look up what is in those vaccines that you are going to put into your child.
You need to do your homework on those products just as we do on car seats and the cars we drive as well.
It is my belief that we have been miseducated when it comes to vaccination and immunization. It is clear that vaccines do not automatically provide lifetime immunization. It is also clear that the idea that they are safe and effective has never been proven by any measurable standards. Part of the reason we're not learning about prevention or natural treatment is because it's not profitable. It's not patentable.
The problem that we have here, I believe, is the mistake of believing that experts have the answer to questions. And in fact, the responsibility for the health of children in this society rests primarily on the children's parents. And parents should have the right to opt out of vaccination.
The right to informed consent to vaccination can be defined as a human right because vaccination is a medical intervention that carries a risk of injury or death. And if you cannot make a choice about whether or not you're going to put yourself or your child at risk for a vaccine that could kill or injure you, then how can we say that we are free in America?
This isn't freedom. I'm trapped. I am absolutely trapped. I can't keep up with the care of my son because no one will help me.
If we are wrong, we should know about it. We need the evidence, the proof, one way or the other, so that parents can be reassured or otherwise. Because if it eventually turns out that we're true, the whole vaccination program will be in chaos throughout the Western world.
It's time to stop hiding from the questions around vaccines, around their safety and their efficacy. We owe it to the kids. We need to be more responsible. We need to open this dialogue throughout everyone in the medical community and the healthcare community.
It's the system that we should attack. It's the system that we should get rid of, not the individuals who are conscientious, are doing their best, working within the system.
Take the commercialism out of medicine. Go back to when physicians were primarily concerned with the welfare of their patients.
I believe that a nation that requires all of its children to receive dangerous chemicals injected into them from birth, knowing that some of them will die and some of them will be maimed, faces an enormous moral question that it has to sort out. It is a moral question that all policymakers so far are avoiding.
I think if we're personally affected in whatever way, cancer, autism, autoimmune disease, that then our eyes are opened. And I think one by one, our eyes are becoming opened because more and more of us are personally affected by these diseases.
20 or 25 years from now, if we do not address this problem now, our children are not going to be saying very nice things about us. They will hold us accountable.
We do not know what future generations are going to suffer because we have not been smart enough or brave enough to question mass vaccination.
So now we're asking the populace to continue to get immunized year after year and decade after decade with vaccines that are preventing disease that largely they don't see. And I think that that's a challenge. I just only hope that the lesson doesn't always have to be that children die for us to learn that vaccines are still important.
The absence of infectious disease is not the only way that we measure health. We measure health mostly by an absence of chronic disease and disability. By that score, we're not doing very well. And I think we need to take a step back and examine whether or not we should be having some of these infections. We should be getting the flu when we're young and develop an immunity to type A and type B flu. And when that strain comes around in another 10 years, we already have an experience with that strain and we don't get it again, or we get a much milder case.
The only protection there is health. We have to keep ourselves healthy.
I want to read you something that I bought my son the day he was born. It's a card. And it says, "On the day you were born, I held you close and felt your tiny body warm against my own. I looked at you and looked at you as you slept. I felt as if my eyes couldn't hold enough of you. Then you looked into my eyes with trust and innocence, and we locked hearts." And why this is so important to me is that my son trusts me. He trusted me to do the right thing for him. So I trusted the Centers for Disease Control. I trusted the Food and Drug Administration to make sure what I was doing and the decisions I made for my child were safe. They failed. They're asleep at the switch.
The Honorable Seattle and Austin Circuit Judge Pilar.
Be seated.
August 2004, after being imprisoned for 6 years, Alan Yurko is granted a retrial. On August 27th, the charges of shaken baby syndrome were dropped, and Alan Yurko was released from the Century Correctional Facility.
I can't explain how I felt walking out of the county jail. Even the prisoners that were, as I was walking out and walking by all the, it's almost like a perp walk. I had to walk by hundreds of them. They were standing up and cheering, and giving me thumbs up. That was, I started thinking like Shawshank Redemption or something. It's just unreal. It's really unreal. Yes, they got in some good licks, but I think we won in that event in technical knockouts. We did great impeachment of their witnesses. They broke down. Their witnesses actually, at trial, never ever conceded to any differential diagnosis. But here, once they saw that we had done our homework, they had to stick to the script. They had to say what was right. Yes, there were differential diagnoses for this. So I'm here, I'm free, I'm okay. I am really okay with how it turned out. We're opening some eyes, and that's a really good feeling. It's a really good feeling.
Today, Alan Yurko is helping to fight on behalf of others who have been falsely charged for shaken baby death syndrome. It is not possible to cover all the different aspects of an important story such as this in the limitations of one program. I am hopeful, however, that this has given us all a moment to focus on the myth that the medical community and the science behind it is always working on our behalf, always at the highest level of integrity, and always with the purpose of freeing us from the harms of disease. Clearly, that is not the case when it comes to vaccination.